AI is everywhere and there's no getting around that anymore. Whether that be engineers implementing it into their workflow, someone in your family getting recipes for the evening dinner, or generating some questionable dating profile prompts, it's definitely infiltrated most of everyone's day-to-day lives. But when it comes to our professional lives, how are the people at the top seeing the future of work when it comes to implementing AI? To help answer these questions, we here at Bloomberg Intelligence, Bloomberg's financial research department, conducted a survey to gather insights from C-suite leaders, with a goal to understand where they see AI implementation when it comes to implementing it in our workflows, and the potential for wider industry disruption. The results were maybe somewhat surprising, especially with the general feelings people have around AI, with the impact it may have around our careers and our progression, and whether our jobs are indeed under threat. We'll also be talking with the analyst who helped head up the survey, Anurag Rana, our chief technology analyst here at Bloomberg Intelligence, to get his views throughout the video on these findings. Hi everyone, sorry for interrupting, but I'm Jeremy, I'm the producer for Bloomberg Intelligence's YouTube channel. And I just want to bring you a message, as these videos are brought to you by an amazing in-house team right here at Bloomberg. We really believe in bringing you the insights needed to help you understand the finance world. And to help us carry on doing that, subscribing, liking, commenting, sharing really helps us out a lot. All right, with the admin out of the way, let's get you back to the content. Enterprise AI adoption is accelerating, but not every industry feels the impact in the same way. The latest Bloomberg Intelligence survey shows a sharp divide between sectors that feel highly exposed to AI-driven disruption and those that view it as more of an incremental tool. And this is actually where the disruption narrative becomes more nuanced than many may assume. Software firms, for instance, show the greatest amount of concern. They operate in fast-moving markets where product cycles are actually quite short. Features update rapidly, and customers can swap between competitors in a pretty much frictionless environment. These companies tell us that they worry not only about competitors potentially integrating AI more seamlessly, but also about entirely new models of software delivery emerging. In their view, the risk is not about losing ground slowly, but being overtaken quickly if they fall behind in integrating AI into core functions, from developer tools to customer support. On the other end of the spectrum, however, there are telecommunications companies, which report the lowest levels of disruption anxiety. Their businesses rely on longer-term infrastructure cycles, regulated environments, and predictable service contracts. For them, AI enhances existing operations, improving network optimization, customer triage, and fraud detection, without, crucially, threatening the underlying business model. This contrast underscores that disruption is not uniform, but depends on operating structures, competitive pressures, and the cadence of innovation. One last interesting fact emanating from the responses show that respondents generally view their own organizations as more resilient to AI disruption than the broader industries that they operate in, showcasing a consistent theme across the survey. Disruption is expected, but usually for others first. Many companies acknowledge that AI could reshape their sector, yet they tend to believe that internal capabilities, culture, or strategic positioning place them on stronger footing than the wider industry, reflecting confidence in existing workflows, proprietary data, or early investment in AI-related projects. It may also indicate a degree of bias, where firms underestimate the pace of external change while overestimating their own readiness. To get more clarification on these points, I had a chat with Anurag to see what he took away from these findings. Respondents actually rated their organisations as better positioned, as it were, than their peers in the sort of overall industries. Do you see that as a sign of genuine preparedness within these organisations? Or does it reveal potentially a blind spot, as it were, in how companies assess their own resilience compared to the wider industries?
I think it is probably the latter. I think it is more of a blind spot for most companies, thinking that they are better prepared, their market position is a little bit better. I mean, no executive will go out and admit that their company is ill-equipped to deal with the investments in AI. But the thing I think, more than that, what we want to focus on is the level of nervousness about industry disruption is so high that I don't think any sector will be, you could say, lazy enough or not prepared enough to invest heavily in this area over the next few years. Now, the pace of that adoption or the investment will vary on your industry and what kind of operating expense you have, all your structure versus what kind of new incumbents are coming into that market. But I think the broad-based interest in adding more AI capabilities is one of our grand takeaways.
Public debate often frames AI as an imminent threat to jobs, but the data from companies using these tools are actually telling us a bit of a different story. In our survey, the most consistent signal is that the first phase of AI-related headcount adjustments has already happened, and further reductions over the next 2 to 3 years actually seem unlikely. In fact, the overall hiring outlook is actually more stable than many headlines may suggest. Respondents told us that early changes were generally targeted at repetitive, rule-based tasks or functions, where automation had already been underway. Beyond that, companies are now focused on reshaping roles, not eliminating them. Anurag also offered some clarification and additional perspective on this point.
So I think it would be premature for companies to start getting rid of, let's say, their accountants or people in human resources or finance or research, because we are not there yet. These tools, what we have right now, are doing very well when it comes to consumer use cases, these AI bots and AI tools. However, when it comes to enterprise, we have a long way to go because it's still not married to the enterprise data we have. It's still not married to all the different context or logic or business processes that we have there. There are security concerns, there are privacy concerns, there's a shortage of infrastructure. So we are far away from all these tools going mainstream in a large company, and that's kind of the big disconnect you could attribute to some of those job comments that you alluded to.
What's particularly interesting is actually how the sentiment holds across industries, including those with high disruption risk. Even software firms who feel the most pressure from AI on their business models do not anticipate broad workforce cuts. Meanwhile, sectors with slower product cycles, such as telecoms and industrials, as we talked about earlier, anticipate stable or even higher staffing needs. This reinforces a broader theme. AI is changing how people work instead of whether they work. What this means for the medium term is a period of adjustment rather than contraction. If disruption risk varies across industries and workforce impacts look stable, the one barrier companies agree on is infrastructure. Our survey has shown that the availability, cost, and reliability of AI infrastructure was one of the most pressing concerns across industries, only beaten out by data privacy and cybersecurity risks. And it is shaping how quickly and how broadly organizations can scale their AI ambitions. This isn't just a budget restraint either, but a practical limitation driven by global demand for high-performance compute outpacing supply. So as a result, companies are shifting their deployment strategies. Rather than building custom models for every function, they are turning towards API-based access from major providers, helping to limit capital expenditure. But this also results in concentrating their reliance on a small number of model developers. We also asked Anurag how this fits into the broader picture.
Yeah, so one of the things is, I think the tech industry has shown to most of the companies, and the most of companies are actually well aware of this thing, that you really don't need to build the infrastructure yourself. You really don't need to get into the business of buying servers, putting them together, buying chips. Let that be the headache of these large tech providers, and I'm going to use their resources on a per use basis, which is your expenditure is not so much upfront, but as you are trying to build these apps. So these Fortune 2000 companies are not the one who are investing this gigantic money, other than the top 10 tech providers that are out there. Because at the end of the day, people are going to go to them and say, I'm going to use your infrastructure, but I'm going to build my own application around it. And I think that's the big difference, that this talk of the bubble, it surrounds and it's concentrated on a handful of companies, and it's not across the board around the 9 different industries that we are talking about, because they are not the ones who are running out and buying equipment. Now, it may have been different in the prior era of the internet boom, because cloud was not a factor at that point. In fact, AWS was not even founded when the internet bubble started at that point. So I think that is a big difference, that the concentration risk right now is in a handful of areas, and these are very profitable companies. For the most part, there are a handful of areas there could be some excess, but it's not these banks who are going out and investing this crazy amount of money. It is usually the top 3 and 4 cloud providers.
Despite the introduction of new data centers and hardware, supply growth is lagging behind the accelerating demand. The successful deployment of AI is less dependent on available talent or even a firm's appetite for risk, and is instead primarily determined by their ability to secure the necessary compute resources to support AI models reliably and securely. Companies are eager to scale, but the limited resources available represent the real speed limit.